The latest from Adam Schefter. The rumor mill does not stop in the NFL, and we've got you covered every day with it here on Locked On 49ers. Jimmy G, not a lock to be traded this offseason. Is Trey Lance further away than we all think? All of that and more coming up right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you once again at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. We do have some tweets and some emails maybe to get into here a little bit on today's show. Tomorrow, you're going to want to tune in as well. We're going to finish off the week with the cornerback position. What is the offseason plan at cornerback and safety? The DBs for the 49ers. Croc has been just grinding over there. He's doing Locked On NFL Draft as well daily here on the network. So he's been doing his work when it comes to draft prospects. So we'll see what he thinks about the positions there in the secondary for the 49ers. We'll look at in-house free agents, maybe some free agents on the market, potentially to bring in from other teams on the outside into the 49ers organization. But a Schefter bomb was dropped today, Croc, and we've got to cover it because there was a few very interesting things he said. And on a podcast with Ari Merov, who does a PFF pod, and he's an insider newsbreaker type of guy himself, and he had the best in the business as far as the NFL goes in Adam Schefter on the show. And Schefter did not want to concede that Jimmy Garoppolo was for sure going to be traded this offseason. I think he's maybe wrong there. Maybe he thinks the percentage is higher that Jimmy could stay. I'm not so sure, but the things that really jumped out to me, Croc, and I know you listened to the episode as well.
Yep.
The things that jumped out to me, were that his $25 million salary, which we've talked about on the show, being like, I don't know if a team, not every team is going to want to have doesn't have the cap room or going to want to take on Jimmy Garoppolo's 1 year, $25 million salary. Schefter called it a friendly contract. He said, like teams would be happy to take on $25 million, which I guess makes sense versus what they would have to pay for Jimmy G or Kirk Cousins, what he got paid on the open market if he was an unrestricted free agent. So I guess I understand that a little bit. $25 million.
It is friendly in the sense of a starting quarterback on a non-rookie contract. $25 million is friendly. When you consider what Dak Prescott's making, north of $40 million. Patrick Mahomes, with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen actually got it, north of $40 million a year. So from that standpoint, you're talking about $15 million less than the market for the big-time guys. It's friendly to a roster, but not friendly when you're also paying a rookie. I believe it's like $9 million this year.
Right. Or if you're the Carolina Panthers, who's already locked into $18 million with Sam Darnold, you're going to throw another $25 million onto that. So maybe not for every team it works, but for a team that is quarterback needy. And there was a report last week talking about how teams felt about it was the report from an executive that said he wouldn't be shocked if that Washington, for example, could talk themselves into giving a first-round pickup for Jimmy Garoppolo because he's a legitimate starter. And legitimate starter isn't the greatest compliment in the world. You're not calling him a superstar or anything like that. But $25 million, legitimate starter. If you don't have one of the top 16 to 20 starters in the NFL, you're behind. You're behind every single week in this league. And so that's where I think the value for Jimmy Garoppolo comes in. And we'll see what that ends up being for the 49ers in the value they get in return. Go ahead.
Did you see my tweet on what Colin Cowherd said?
No.
He essentially said basically the best quarterback in every division won the division. Now, so that's saying that Matthew Stafford is better than Russell Wilson, which I definitely saw some pushback in my mentions, but I think it's very debatable because this is the first time that we saw Matthew Stafford with a really good team and the results were Super Bowl. So I think there is an argument to be made that potentially Matthew Stafford's better than Russell Wilson, who has never in his career, which is crazy, received an MVP vote. That's amazing. But that just shows kind of I don't want to say what it takes to win in the NFL because we've seen the 49ers winning division with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I don't know if anybody would ever say that he's better than Russell Wilson, but it just shows that in today's day and age, the power of the quarterback typically throughout the NFL.
Yeah, you just go back to the teams that won the Super Bowls and the teams that lost the Super Bowls even, or the teams that lost in the playoffs to those quarterbacks. And it's all, it was Stafford this year. It's Mahomes. It's Tom Brady. It's Mahomes again. It's Tom Brady again. And that's just it's the nature of the league. But for a team that, and I've been talking about this a lot, and I really think it's true, fans don't like the idea of Jimmy Garoppolo. Some 49ers fans don't like the idea of Jimmy Garoppolo, but the 49ers themselves, the team actually likes him more than some of the fans that are kind of anti-Jimmy. And we've talked to fans of other teams. I talked to David Harrison, who co-hosts both the Locked On Buccaneers podcast and the Locked On Commanders podcast. And both those teams are in the quarterback market. And a really cool podcast that Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers did recently, where he collected offers from other hosts and then he picked which offer he liked the best. And he ended up, getting a crazy haul from Cody Rourke and the Denver Broncos in that podcast, in that mock trade scenario. And I tagged all the hosts and I said, well, where's the Jimmy Garoppolo offers? And none of the hosts of those teams are super excited about sending me an offer. Maybe after, they don't get Aaron Rodgers and don't get Russell Wilson and don't get Deshaun Watson or whatever, then maybe those offers come in, and that's probably what it'll be like for some teams, making sure who's available and who they can get on the market. But David Harrison responded. He says, I don't even think you would like the offer. Basically, it's a disrespectful offer, so I'm not even going to send you one because they're not excited about it. But I think someone like Ron Rivera, whose job would be on the line if he can't start winning games, I think teams, GMs, head coaches because fans are going to be fans in 10 years, they're going to be fans in 15 years. Fans don't get fired from franchises, but coaches and GMs do. So they're going to look at this thing very differently, and they see legitimate starting quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo for $25 million in a second rounder, and they will say, yes, please, because I want to have a job again next year. And that might be the best path for them to keep their jobs.
Yeah, and we've talked about it. I talked about it. Remember, I came on this show live after being on Spaces on Twitter with some Washington Commanders people, and they're like, hell no to Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm like, dude, y'all tripping. I get it. It's not the sexiest things. And I don't even know how much of a debate having or not having Jimmy Garoppolo would be if not for Trey Lance being on the roster, right? If you were going into next season and there was no Trey Lance, you should be trying to figure out how to get better around Jimmy Garoppolo and know that, hey, if Jimmy Garoppolo, if he plays the whole season, got a chance for a late playoff push. So, I think it's the dynamic of Trey Lance with 49er fans. I don't think the chatter would be as loud if there were no. So when you hear these other fan bases really kind of push down or punch down on Jimmy Garoppolo, it's like, y'all are wrong. Like, he is not this terrible quarterback. I remember mentioning that, hey, the Giants should be a team that's in the market for Jimmy Garoppolo. And they said, hell no. We'd rather have, and they named off all these other terrible quarterbacks, including Daniel Jones. And I just think from that standpoint, I think these fan bases are completely wrong and probably on a totally different page than their front offices of their favorite teams.
Giants fans are about to talk themselves into Mitch Trubisky. That's where some fan bases are and some organizations are. And when you have to talk yourself into Mitch Trubisky, when you have to spend draft picks on Sam Darnold, who is clearly now, we know, is not a good NFL quarterback, right? You can solidify that position and get a guy that you can win with, a guy who's gone to a Super Bowl, gone to an NFC championship in 2 out of the last 3 years. So that has value. I know it's not a sexy name for some fans, and I know some fans want more, but hey, when the draft is as it is this year, and it's not a top-heavy draft, there's probably not a quarterback that you're thinking you're going to draft it and he's going to come in and start games for you and win. And even when you're a good quarterback, that's not likely to happen for those quarterbacks' rookie seasons, as we saw last year. When you don't have an opportunity to trade for Russell Wilson, you don't have an opportunity to trade for Aaron Rodgers, what are you to do? And that's when teams are going to come calling for Jimmy Garoppolo. So we'll see what that trade value ends up being. I want to talk about another thing that he said that, I think a lot of people have glanced over about Trey Lance being greener than everybody thinks. This is interesting to me, and I think we need to dive into this a little bit deeper next, and we'll get into the Locked On 49ers mailbag as well coming up. If you think the 49ers, whether they're quarterbacked by Jimmy G or Trey Lance, maybe it's Tom Brady quarterbacking the 49ers, if you like their odds to win the Super Bowl next year, you can bet on those types of things. Super Bowl futures are available at betonline.net, even though the football season is over. More and more draft props will be showing up at betonline.net before the NFL draft in April. Basketball in full swing, pro and college hoops. The NCAA tournament is coming up All the latest odds, totals, player performance, props at betonline.net, the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for sports scores and news as well, not just all of your wagering. And it's not just football and basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, casino games. You want to play poker? You want to play blackjack? You can do that at BetOnline. So head over to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, thanks everybody for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL and Locked On NFL Draft, experts on everything going on in the NFL Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get your podcast, just like Locked On 49ers is. Eric Crocker. Croc, what's your middle name?
Christopher.
Eric Christopher Crocker. That's got a ring to it, by the way. I think you should go with the full name. I use Brian Dean Peacock a lot. That's why BD Peacock is my handle. And when I was doing some broadcasting stuff and traffic reporting, some stations, I'd be doing multiple stations at one time on the radio, and some of the stations want you to have a different name. So even though it's the same voice, it's a different name as if it's a different person on their station who's broadcasting on this station at the same time. Yeah. So I'd be plugging into all different stations. It's a crazy life doing traffic reporting on the radio, trying to keep up with what's going on the roadways and then jumping around to different radio stations. But I would use Brian Peacock. I would use Brian Dean. I would make up all these other aliases. I did Craig Rogers once, which was a hat tip to both Roger Craig, the 49er, and Roger Craig, the old manager of the San Francisco Giants as well. So I would just come up with all these different aliases sometimes, but Brian Dean Peacock was my official SAG name. So that's where the BDP is. Eric Christopher Crocker has a good ring to it.
Do you know how long it took? Like, can you imagine being a 5 and 6 and 7 year old trying to learn how to spell a middle name with 11 characters in it?
You mean there's no F in Christopher? No, it's a PH.
It's like,
what? My son, his middle name is Christopher too. That's a great middle name. Eric Christopher Crocker, do you think there's anything to what Schefter's talking about here with Trey Lance being greener than everyone expected?
I don't know. Okay, this is what I do know. All right. From the start of training camp, what he was doing, you had longtime 49er beat writers, Mayoko, Barrows, all these guys coming out and saying he is much further along than what we expected. And these are guys that were pushing back on the thought of drafting a Trey Lance. Oh, he's not going to be ready. He's not going to be this passer. They should go with Mac Jones. Training camp starts. Hell, Grant Cohn. Grant Cohn was the guy that was saying he's Tim Tebow, but faster or something like that. You know, he's a running back. You know, they had all these things to say about Trey Lance. They saw him in training camp and said, oh my gosh, like he's much further along. And Mayoko was the one that I was really blown away with how high he was on what he was seeing from Trey Lance. So to hear that maybe the coaching staff felt a different way, I'm not going to say that's not true, but I don't know to what extent. Now, we all watched him. I say the Cardinals game, or really we'll start with the Seahawks game when he came in. It didn't look quite right? Like it was just like he came out, first pass was in the dirt on a little rollout. He missed some other throws, fired some throws around, came out against Arizona, definitely was a little excited, but he made some plays. And at least there were some things where it's like, you know what? I could see this kind of heading in the right direction. Then the Houston Texans game, I don't know how you could say he's greener than everyone thought when that was a game where when he didn't have a great first half, he was 10 or 13 passing. He finished the game 17 or 23 or whatever it was, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. And you saw a lot of high moments and still things that he needed to improve on. But I didn't think he was any greener than any other rookie quarterback from that standpoint, just watching him. But I did some math, Peacock.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Do you want me to wait out? Okay.
I can't wait to hear about the math project you've been working on as it pertains to Trey Lance. But one of my questions is, how green did we expect him to be? And that was kind of the thing. It was like, he has the greenest resume we've ever seen. We have literally, Nick Crocker, name another quarterback who was drafted, period. Not top 3, not in the first round, who was drafted, period, who didn't play his college season before the draft.
Man, yeah, that's tough. Even Davis Mills and Mac Jones. Mac Jones for 17 starts.
Yeah. But
Ultimately,
at
Trey
least they were
Lance
17 starts leading up to the draft.
leading up to the draft.
Trey Lance
Davis
didn't play.
Mills, his starts in playing time was kind of all over the place as well. And I think he only had 13. But even then, he at least was at the program for like 4 years. He just dealt with injuries and different things. So, yeah, as far as how green he was, there were some elements of his game that I felt like translated to the NFL extremely well, being under center, understanding how to command the huddle, line adjustments, spitting out play calls. Some other quarterbacks, they didn't even huddle up or say a play. They just looked to the sideline, looked at a big Daffy Duck sign. All right. But Trey Lance, I felt like those things would be simple. But, there was a green element of playing at FCS level, which Adam Schefter alluded to. And also just limited throws and things like that needed to come with time. So I think from that standpoint, and even what we've seen, I don't know if we were expecting to see anything greener, but I thought he finished fairly strong for someone that only had 2 starts.
That's just it. What I saw from Trey Lance, the last we saw of him in week 17 of his rookie season, was way less green than what I would have expected from a prospect that was drafted when he was 20 years old, played 1 season of ball at the FCS level, then didn't even play the year before he was drafted. He has such a unique resume for a draft prospect, and I always harp on that because it's so true. And that was the shocking part of the 49ers trading up to draft that guy at number 3 overall, because if he was crazy green, you would have nobody to blame but yourself, because of course he is, because of how little he's played. And then it becomes this circular argument, and you have to see that coming if you're the 49ers, that of course he's green, but how does he get better? He needs to play. The things he's missing is reps, first team reps, game reps that he didn't get in college. So if you don't give him that, he's always going to be green. And it's this circular conversation that we're seeing again and again, and we're seeing it again now this offseason. And it makes me want to pull my hair out, because it's the most obvious thing ever, because yes, we already knew that, because that's the thing you drafted. So you had to be prepared for that. And if that was your plan and you're okay with it, then go with your plan and go develop this young quarterback. And so it's sort of maddening to hear people talk about that. And to a large degree, Croc, I think you're right. The quarterback we saw in week 17 was much less green than I think you would expect for a guy who didn't play the year before he was drafted. And a guy that only played 1 year at FCS level, I think he was much less green than that. But I think there's also some evidence, especially the way he was utilized. His usage in his first start, the very first game plan that Kyle Shanahan drew up for Trey Lance,
Yeah.
It was like, you don't know how the hell to use this kid, or he's completely not ready to run your offense, because that was strange seeing 16 carries for Trey Lance.
So maybe that was the super green.
Right.
That was, he's much greener than what we were expecting, right? Or what we thought at some point, even though, again, training camp, he comes in, oh my gosh, he's further along than we expect. But at some point, he regressed, or I don't know what the hell happened. But come week 17, and as Schefter has said it, and other people have reported, they have been very happy with his progression and saying that he's coming along extremely well. And I think week 17, even with a excited first half, is evidence of it heading in the right direction.
It's absolutely heading in the right direction. I don't think anyone's disappointed in what they saw from Trey Lance as a rookie. Obviously, the talent is there, and maybe that's what the whispers are behind the scenes of Trey Lance being less ready or more green, is the fact that there's a lot in Kyle Shanahan's offense to cram into your brain. And clearly Kyle didn't believe he was ready for that in the first start, but clearly he believed he was more ready for it in the second start. And we saw that, development before our eyes. And he needs to start putting those things together and get all the reps that a number 1 quarterback would get. And the development needs to happen. The 49ers need to be prepared to develop that quarterback that they spent so much draft capital on to get in Trey Lance. So you should not be shocked at all if he's somewhat green, because you should expect that. And you should have a plan in place and be ready to go through that plan to develop that quarterback. And I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo should anymore stand in the way of that. Now, I want to hear these numbers that you've been working on over here behind the scenes, because I'm trying to put it together in my head. And I think statistically, I think it might start to look pretty good, especially when you compare it to what some of the other rookies look like this year, and they got to play all 17 games.
All right, so you know what? Here, this is a fun exercise. I just want to hear what you think his passing yards, passing touchdowns, rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. Just throw out some numbers on what you think this would look like over a 17-game season.
On a per game basis or on just
overall, full 17-game season.
Okay, so Trey Lance, if you extrapolate his rookie season to a 17-game season, what would his numbers look like for the season? Well, let's see. He was hurt.
Don't think too hard. Just throw the numbers out there.
He was hurt, so he misses 6 games. No, I'm just kidding. So 17 games of Trey Lance. Man, it was probably over 3,000 yards, right? Probably closer to 4,000 yards because he put up some passing yards, especially in that second game. He's going to carry the ball a ton, so there's going to be a ton of rushing yards because he's going to average 10 carries per game. So I can't even begin to, because I didn't know you did this, and I haven't really thought about what the numbers were and extrapolating those out into 17 games. But I have a feeling it's going to be more impressive than I think even right now. I think I'm underestimating what it's going to look like.
Okay. So this is green, right? This is the greenest of green prospects. And this is him. He had 2 weeks of first string reps throughout this entire time. 2 weeks. If you take his numbers of what he did and I divided this by 2.5 games. All right. So 2.5 games worth of rushing yards, passing yards, and then multiply that over 17 games. Now, disclaimer, I did kind of cheatingly throw in that one touchdown pass to in the Lions game.
In week 1. So that's giving him, so he's going to have
giving him
more touchdowns than he should have because you're giving him a touchdown per game because of that one throw.
No, I mean, it's just kind of bunched in there with everything else.
Okay.
All right, but anyways, so his numbers over 17 games. 4,100 passing yards, 1,142 rushing yards.
So we're talking about 5,000 yards of offense for this green rookie quarterback.
34 touchdown passes. And I don't know why it's 6.8, but it says 6.8 rushing touchdowns.
Whew.
And 17 interceptions. So 34 tugs, 17 picks, and over 5,200 yards of total offense, over 4,100 passing yards, which would be a 49er record. That's the greenest quarterback that they've ever seen in the world in NFL history. With his numbers, what he did spread out over 17 weeks. And that was with 2 weeks of starting reps in practice. 57% passer. That's not high.
No,
but
you definitely want that to climb over 60% and climb over 65% ideally. So even if you take out that one touchdown, though, he still had a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio for a rookie. That would not be bad at all. So 34 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, 34 and 17. That's 2-to-1. That's nothing wrong with that at all.
And that just kind of adds context to like he was making plays. So for Kyle Shanahan, who feels like I don't know how to call plays for him, I can't figure it out. Just let the guy loose. Let him loose. And do some Andy Reid stuff, right? Andy Reid, I don't think he puts the handcuffs on Patrick Mahomes. Kyle Shanahan wants things done such a specific way that, he's greener than I thought because he wants it done this way, where you have this guy that has this immense talent. Let him do his thing. Don't handcuff him. Let it loose. And there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, but clearly this is a player that can be extremely productive.
Okay, I want to move on to some mailbag stuff next, but yeah.
That would be probably the greatest season in 49er history at quarterback position.
I mean, that's over 5,000 yards from scrimmage of passing yards and rushing yards. That's crazy. I'm not looking it up. I'm sure that's more
40 touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm sure that's more than what Lamar Jackson did in his first full season as a starter, and that's not even
he was MVP. I don't know.
Let's find out.
Now he threw like 36 touchdowns or something crazy.
Lamar Jackson. So he didn't play his rookie year except for that last game, right? So his first full season was 2019. He had 3,100 passing yards, and he had
over 1,000
1,200 rushing yards. So he's still 1,000 yards shy of that in yards from scrimmage. That's crazy. What I'm hearing from Croc right now is draft Trey Lance in your fantasy football leagues if
He
he's going to be for the 49ers.
he led all rookies in fantasy points per game. Now again, 2 game starts, but and even Cardinals game wasn't that great. He had around 300 yards of offense by himself in a game where not that great in his first week ever of starting reps. Like there's something there, and people act like it's just he's incompetent as a quarterback.
That's not counting any games where he goes off too. Like he's gonna have some games where he's crazy good, maybe some games where he really is bad, and I'm sure there's gonna be some growing pains for him. But man, he's got to go through those growing pains. He needs reps, Croc. He needs reps. He needs to play.
Josh Allen just had a game at the end of the season where he threw 100 passing yards and 3 interceptions, no touchdowns. Like and that was at the end of just this last year, his 4th year.
Yeah, and it's not like development doesn't end here. He's going to keep getting – he's 21 years old. He's going to keep getting better in 2022, 2023, 2025, 2027, right? So there's a long road there, but what we've already seen is pretty amazing for the unique resume that he brings that is a player never seen drafted that high, that's played that little ever.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying he's going to have this type of season, and I'm not saying he's going to be amazing, but I think – just kind of adding these numbers on the small sample size of what we saw spread out over 17 games is not the worst thing in the world. And again, even if he doesn't reach his numbers, but he does have more of a, say he throws for 3,500 yards, 28 touchdowns, has another 6 rushing touchdowns, runs for another 700 yards, still very productive as a rookie. And I believe it'll lead to wins. He got good weapons around him. He's going to be all right.
And probably if he's carrying the ball 170 times per season, that wouldn't be a great situation. And we might have a hurt quarterback on our hands too. So let's calm down on that usage a little bit. Use the legs when it's needed. 16 carries per game. I hope I never see that again for young Trey Lance or eventually old Trey Lance. All right, Croc, a couple of questions here from the listeners that pertain to Jimmy Garoppolo's potential trade value, what that could look like, and a call back to our earlier podcast Tuesday talking about the wide receiver plan in the offseason for the 49ers. I don't have the name pulled up here because I can't find it, but somebody asked me earlier today about Jarvis Landry. Do you like Jarvis Landry as an option for the 49ers?
He doesn't move the needle for me for the receivers because I like the 49ers receivers. I just want a different dimension to the offense. And I don't think Jarvis Landry, who's a terrific receiver, he doesn't move the needle from that standpoint. Now, 49ers got him. All right, whatever. But I would like to have somebody that brings something different than what we have from 2 solid receivers. And Debo is more than solid. And Brandon Ayuk.
Brandin Cooks. David brings up an interesting name. Brandin Cooks, younger than Cooper Kupp, and should be a legit target this offseason. There's a lot of rumors that he's going to be available for trade from the Houston Texans. He's making about $12 million on the last year of his deal in 2022. David says he always put up numbers, gives Trey some more weapons. Your thoughts? What sort of contract do you think he gets is offered? 2 years, 15 guaranteed to come to a contender. Well, first of all, Brandin Cooks still under contract. So he's not a free agent yet. He's under contract 1 more year. So it'd be a trade situation. And you'd be trading for a guy that's going to make about $12 million next year. You throw a couple draft picks or a draft pick, or what's the highest draft pick for Brandin Cooks, would give the Niners a little speed element on the outside.
He's Northside Stockton boy. So, I always rock with my guy, Brandin Cooks. I think he's the most underrated receiver in the NFL. Every year goes over 1,000 yards, damn near for his entire career. I think there's twice he did in his rookie year, then like one other year. Every other year, over 1,000, which the 49ers are clamoring to have a Brandon Ayuk go over 1,000 yards, right? Brandin Cooks, he does that in his sleep. And he did it last year with, Davis Mills and whoever else they had playing quarterback. So just the production for him does not stop. He was a big-time weapon for them in the game against the 49ers. He made a bunch of plays and actually had a deep ball that got called back because of a holding penalty. I mean, he's just extremely productive. And, again, now he brings that different element of speed, vertical threat that it would be nice to see the 49ers have.
How about this one from David talking about a Jimmy G trade? What if, to maximize immediate impact, Jimmy is traded quarterback needy team in exchange for a starting player instead of a draft pick? Will against the cap, but if they can get a DB, defensive end, wide receiver, starter, that may get them further next season. What are your thoughts? Jimmy for a player rather than Jimmy for picks?
I like the thoughts of it because at least with the player, there's way less unknown. With rookies, there's always projection. I would say you have to throw in a pick as well because quarterbacks just move the needle so much more. So it's not like you're going to say, oh, Jimmy G straight up for like Kyle or Kendall Fuller. I see his name thrown out around a lot. It's not even because of the impact that the quarterback has on a team. So it would have to be Fuller and a third round pick or something along those lines.
I can see a player as a throw-in, but again, you have to weigh what contract you're getting back, and it's sort of like the Jarvis Landry thing. What's the cost going to be versus how much that player moves the needle? And the other thing is, a team that's trading for Jimmy Garoppolo is probably trying to win now, and they're not trying to give up starters, so they'd rather give up picks anyway. So I think it's much more likely that the 49ers get picks in return. Maybe there's a player that's a throw-in that's not a starting caliber player, but, a kick returner or, a depth at a certain position. Maybe that's sort of the throw-in with the player, but I don't see a player being a main part of a Jimmy Garoppolo contract. Right. Here we go, full circle as it pertains to developing young Trey Lance and bringing in a quarterback. Straight Gangster says, A-Rod, he used the A-Rod nickname too. Aaron Rodgers sat behind Favre for 3 years, and he turned out pretty decent. It's not typical, but definitely not heard of. If Tampa Bay wants to play for, if Tom Brady wants to play for San Francisco, then let's go. It shouldn't hurt Lance in any way, sitting, learning from a legit legend. Yeah, and so my thing with Lance and whether Tom Brady wants to play for the Niners or not, they're two different things. I just talked about the Lance stuff is like, if you had a plan, like if you're so easily talked out of your plan, why did you go so hard after Trey Lance and spend all this to go trade up and get your guy if you were going to go to a veteran quarterback every year because you weren't ready to put the time in and develop this young quarterback? So that's a separate conversation. When Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, says he wants to come to your team and you already screwed up and didn't take him the first time, you obviously have to listen to that. If the 49ers go bring in Tom Brady, then obviously you understand why they would do that. And I don't think it's crazy of them to entertain that idea. Although Tom Brady right now is like off filming a movie and stuff now too. So I think he's trying to distance himself from the NFL. We'll see what that looks like in the summer. But Aaron, I mean, that was like 15, almost 20 years ago that Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre for 3 years. It just doesn't happen anymore. And with the way contracts are, you've got to figure out like the Green Bay Packers right now, they did it again with Jordan Love. And guess what? That didn't work out as swimmingly so far. We'll see what that ends up looking like. But it didn't work out as good as Rodgers or Favre to Rodgers is Rodgers to Jordan Love. And now, after this year, we might not have seen much of Jordan Love, and they have to figure out if they want to pick up his fifth-year option. So modern-day contracts, the way the modern-day league is, I mean, that was worlds ago how things were in 2005 and 2007 when Aaron Rodgers was sitting behind a Hall of Fame quarterback that they already had in-house in Brett Favre. And the reason they drafted Aaron Rodgers in the first place was because he fell to them, and they're calling other teams, and they're like, on the clock at 24, I was like, what are we missing on Aaron Rodgers? How come teams are not drafting this guy? Because he's that good. We have to take him. The Niners traded up number 3 for their guy. It would have been like if the Green Bay Packers traded up from 24 all the way up to get Aaron Rodgers and then sat him for 3 years, right? So I think the situations are completely different, and you can't really compare the NFL in 2022 to the NFL in 2005.
I do get it in the sense of just unique circumstances, and I think that's what this is. Tom Brady, I'm assuming that is the only guy, well, only quote unquote available guy,
or Jimmy G, or Ryan Fitzpatrick, or who knows, Marcus Mariota. They'll bring him in. He's going to start. Aaron, who else? Andy Dalton. No, I mean, there's a lot of names out there, right? And it's Jimmy Garoppolo was already in house 1 year, and look, the plan is to get him out the door, get Trey Lance going. Tom Brady, I totally understand it, but it's such different.
Brady's the only one where I'd assume that this team would do that for, where like to prolong the development of Trey Lance. Where, like you said, you're hearing Tom Brady wants to come to your team, you got to do it. I think he's the only one they do that for. Aside from that, I think they're all in on Trey Lance and kind of maybe how he's developing, and they're encouraged by that. But are you encouraged enough to say, you know what, Tom Brady, we don't want you again? I don't think so.
And much like the Mac Jones at 3 thing with Adam Schefter last offseason that he got very wrong, are we calling BS on Schefter on this one? Schefter's right a lot, and it's no It's no offense intended toward Adam Schefter, but I'm calling BS on this one as well. And I think maybe the 49ers were feeding them information and were happy to have that information out there that they were going to be drafting Mac Jones when they, in fact, were not going to be drafting Mac Jones at number 3. And I think it benefits the 49ers to have that out there right now this offseason that, hey, if we don't get the right offer, we'll hold on to Jimmy Garoppolo because Trey Lance is green, and we'll hold on to Jimmy G if we don't get those offers. I think that storyline benefits the 49ers, so they might be using old Adam Schefter for their own end a little bit.
I'm not buying Jimmy starting though. I mean, staying. Like if there's going to be somebody starting and it's not Trey Lance, it'd be Tom Brady. Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm willing to bet my entire checking account, which isn't like a ton of money, but it's a good amount of money. I'll put all my checkings account on Jimmy Garoppolo not returning to the 49ers. Only other time I've been wrong on something like that where I'm willing to go all in. Been right more times than not, but the one time I wasn't right, drafting Kinlaw to play 3-tech as opposed to moving Armstead there. I saw people throwing Kinlaw out there, and I'm like, dude, no way. Like, no way. Just they're moving Armstead there, and they ended up drafting Kinlaw. I was dead wrong. So this is another time I could be wrong, but I'm willing to put my money on it. They're not keeping Jimmy Garoppolo. And not a bad. Jimmy's a fine quarterback. He's going to be fine somewhere else, but that's just what the circumstances calls for.
By the way, I have this tweet saved. I was with you on that. I tweeted this on April 17th, 2020, a couple weeks before the draft. I'm all the way out on Kinlaw at 13. Defensive tackle shouldn't be the position to spend those resources on. Kinlaw is a flash player with a killer highlight film, but the consistency isn't there. Add injuries, and he had to lose 40 pounds to get to his current playing weight. Give me offensive tackle or wide receiver at 13. I was all the way out on so Kinlaw. And I was with you. Eric Armstead, you move him right into that thing. You let one defensive tackle go. You plug in Armstead in there. It was perfect. It was all set up. So I was definitely very wrong on the Kinlaw thing as far as what they were going to do, what they should have done. Maybe Croc and I were more correct.
Well, they have done it now, right? It just took them a while to get there, but Armstead playing more 3-tech, got somebody else rushing more on the outside, and they've been better for it. They're better with Armstead being primarily a 3-tech.
And we'll see what happens with DJ Jones. Maybe Kinlaw plays next to Armstead, and they're both in there. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes this offseason. A lot to figure out. We will talk more about the defensive side of the ball, including tomorrow getting into defensive backs, some of Croc's favorite prospects for the 49ers. We'll look at the free agents in-house and both on the free agent market that the 49ers could bring in this offseason. Thanks, everybody, for making us first listen. For your second listen, check me out on the Peacock and Williamson NFL show daily right here on the network. Croc is with Ryan Tracy doing Locked On NFL Draft Daily. Those podcasts, just like this one, are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.